Okay. So I'm on page 36. Can someone unmute and tell me what page you guys are on?
33.
Okay, so we're on 33, and I'm going to go ahead and read right now. If you do have questions, I'd rather you wait until we are at the point where we are at the end of a chapter. Okay, so just go ahead and you can ask, but we'll wait until that point. Okay, so here we go. Chapter 7, Illinois. Well, looky here, Gramps shouted. The Illinois state line. He pronounced Illinois, exactly the way everyone in Bybanks, Kentucky pronounced it. And hearing that, Illinois made me suddenly homesick for Bybanks. What happens to Indiana? Graham said. Why, you gooseberry, Graham said. That's where we've been the past 3 hours, barreling through Indiana. You've been listening to the story of Peavy and Plum Mist, Indiana. Don't you remember Elkhart? We ate lunch in Elkhart. Don't you remember South Bend? You did a pee in South Bend. Why, you missed the entire Hoosier State, you gooseberry. He thought this was very funny. Just then the road curved. It actually curved. This was a shock. And off to the right was a huge jing-bang mass of water. It was as blue as the bluebells that grow behind the barn in Bybanks, and that water just went on and on. It was all you could see. It looked like a huge blue pasture of water. Are we at the ocean? Graham asked. We're not supposed to be passing the ocean, are we? You gooseberry, that's Lake Michigan. Gramps kissed her finger and put it against Graham's cheek. He kissed his finger and put it against Graham's cheek. I sure would like to put my feet in that water, Graham said. Gramps swerved across 2 lanes of traffic and onto the exit ramp, and faster than you could milk a cow, we were standing barefoot in the cool water of Lake Michigan. The waves splashed up on our clothes, and the seagulls flew in circles overhead, calling in one great chorus, as if they were glad to see us. Huzza, huzza, Graham said, wiggling her heels in the sand. Huzza, huzza. We stopped that night on the outskirts of Chicago. I looked around at what I could see of Illinois from the Howard Johnson Motel, and it might as well have been 7,000 miles from the lake. It all looked precisely like northern Ohio to me, with its flat land and long, straight roads. And I thought, what a very long journey this was going to be. With the dark came the whispers, rush, hurry, rush. That night I lay there trying to imagine Lewiston, Idaho, but my mind would not go forward to a place I had never been. Instead, I kept drifting back to Bybanks. When my mother left for Lewiston, Idaho that April, my first thoughts were, how could she do that? How could she leave me? As the days went on, many things were harder and sadder, but some things were strangely easier. When my mother had been there, I was like a mirror. If she was happy, I was happy. If she was sad, I was sad. For the first few days after she left, I felt numb, not feeling. I didn't know how to feel. I would find myself looking around for her to see what I might want to feel. One day, about 2 weeks after she had left, I was standing against the fence watching a newborn calf wobble on its thin legs. It tripped and wobbled and swung its big head in my direction and gave me a sweet, loving look. Oh, I thought, I'm happy at this moment in time. I was surprised that I knew this all by myself without my mother there. And that night in bed, I did not cry. I said to myself, Salamanca Tree Hill, you can be happy without her. It seemed a mean thought, and I was sorry for it, but it felt true. In the motel, as I was remembering these things, Graham came and sat on the edge of my bed. She said, do you miss your daddy? Do you want to call him? I did miss him, and I did want to call him. But I said, no, I'm fine, really. He might think I was a goose if I had to call him already. Okay then, chickabiddy, Graham said. And when she leaned over to kiss me, I could smell the baby powder she always used. That smell made me feel sad, but I didn't know why. The next morning, when we got lost leaving Chicago, I prayed, please don't let us get in an accident. Please get us there in time. Gramps said, at least it's a mighty fine day for a drive. When we finally found a road heading west, we took it. Our plan was to curve across the lower part of Wisconsin, veer into Minnesota, and then barrel straight on through Minnesota, South Dakota, and Wyoming, sweep up into Montana, and cross the Rocky Mountains into Idaho. Gramps figured it would take us about a day in each state. He didn't intend to stop too much until we reached South Dakota, and he was really looking forward to South Dakota. We're going to see the Badlands, he said. We're going to see the Black Hills. I did not like the sound of either of those places, but I knew why we were going there. My mother had been there. The bus that she took out to Lewiston stopped in all the tourist spots. We were following along in her footsteps. So if you have a question, you can unmute. Otherwise, we'll just move on. All right. Chapter 8, The Lunatic. Once we were well on the road out of Illinois, Graham said, go on with Peavy. What happened next? Do you want to hear about the lunatic? Goodness, Graham said, as long as it's not too bloody. That Peavy's just like Gloria. I swear, a lunatic. Imagine. Graham said, did Gloria really have a hankering for me? Well, maybe she did and maybe she didn't, Graham said. Well, god dang, I was only asking. Seems to me, Graham said, you've got enough to worry about concentrating on these roads without worrying about Gloria. Graham winked at me in the rearview mirror. I think our gooseberry's jealous, he said. I am not, said Graham. Tell about Peavy, Chickabiddy. I didn't want Graham and Gramps to get in a fight over Gloria, so I was happy to continue telling Phoebe's story. I was at Phoebe's one Saturday morning when Mary Lou Finney called and invited us over to her house. Phoebe's parents were out, and Phoebe went all around the house checking to make sure that the doors and windows were locked. Her mother had already done this, but she made Phoebe promise to do it as well, just in case. Mrs. Winterbottom had said, I was not sure just in case of what? Maybe in case someone had snuck in and opened all the windows and doors in the 15 minutes between the time she left and the time we did? You can never be too careful, Mrs. Winterbottom had said. The doorbell rang. Phoebe and I looked out the window. Standing on the porch was a young man who looked about 17 or 18, although I'm not as good at guessing people's ages as blind Mrs. Partridge is. The young man was wearing a black t-shirt and blue jeans, and his hands were stuffed into his pockets. He seemed nervous. My mother hates it when strangers come to the door, Phoebe said. She is convinced that any day one of them will burst into this house with a gun and turn out to be an escaped lunatic. Oh, honestly, Phoebe, I said, do you want me to answer the door? Phoebe took a deep breath. We'll do it together. She opened the door and said hello in a cool voice. Is this 49 Gray Street? The young man said. Yes, Phoebe said. So the Winterbottoms live here? After Phoebe admitted that yes, it was the Winterbottoms residence, she said, excuse me a moment, please, and she closed the door. Sal, do you detect any signs of lunacy? There doesn't appear to be any place he could be hiding a gun. His jeans are really tight. Maybe he has a knife tucked in his socks. Phoebe could really be dramatic. He isn't wearing any socks, I said. Phoebe opened the door again. The young man said, I want to see Mrs. Winterbottom. Is she here or what? Yes, Phoebe lied. The young man looked up and down the street. His hair was curly and mussed, and there were bright pink circles on his cheeks. He would not look us straight in the eye, but instead kept glancing to his left and right. I want to talk to her, he said. She can't come to the door right now, Phoebe said. I thought he might actually cry when Phoebe said that. He chewed on his lip and blinked 3 or 4 times quickly. I'll wait, he said. Just a minute, Phoebe said, closing the door. She pretended to look for her mom. Mom, she called. Yoo-hoo! She went upstairs, thumping loudly on the steps. Mother! Phoebe and I returned to the door. He was still standing there with his hands in his pockets, staring mournfully at Phoebe's house. Well, that's strange, Phoebe said to him. I thought she was here, but she must have gone out. There's a whole lot of other people here, though, she added quickly. Scads and scads of people, but no Mrs. Winterbottom. Is Mrs. Winterbottom your mother? He asked. Yes, Phoebe said. Would you like me to leave a message? The little pink circles on his cheeks became even pinker. No, he said. No, I don't think so. No. He looked up and down the street and then up at the number on the door. What's your name? Phoebe. He repeated her name. Phoebe Winterbottom. I thought he was going to make a joke about her name, but he didn't. He glanced at me. Are you a Winterbottom too? He asked. No, I said I'm a visitor. And then he left. He just turned around, walked slowly down the porch steps and out and on down to the street. We waited until he had turned the corner before we left. We ran all the way to Mary Lou's. Phoebe was certain that the young man was going to ambush us. Honestly, like I said, she has a vivid imagination. So go ahead right now and just make some predictions about who the quote-unquote lunatic is. Go ahead and just unmute. I'm going to write these down and put them on our
I have an idea.
page. Go ahead.
Mrs. Phoebe's secret boyfriend.
Okay, and that is so let me see. Hold on. Secret boyfriend. And that's a good guess. That's guessed every year, and that might be it. Someone always guesses right away, so one of you will probably be right because every year somebody does guess what it is. I will not say, of course, and that might be it. If you did read the book before, obviously don't say, but can anyone else who wants to unmute, you can just go ahead and do so right now.
I have one.
Okay.
I think the guy that came to the door might be the lunatic.
Okay. Thank you. And what else? Anyone else? Just unmute and say it.
It could be like a long-lost son of some sort.
Long-lost son. Thank you. Anyone else?
I think it's her secret boyfriend too.
Okay, so another boyfriend, secret boyfriend. Any other ones that are okay? So we've got the secret boyfriend, the lunatic, and the long-lost son. All right, we're going to move on then. We are on to the message. So I think this is when the book really just picks up. This is when it gets really, really good to me. On the way to Mary Lou's, Phoebe said, Mary Lou's family is not nearly as civilized as ours. In what way? I asked. Oh, you'll see, Phoebe said. Mary Lou Finney and Ben Finney were both in our class at school. At first I thought they were sister and brother, but Phoebe told me that they were cousins and that Ben was living with Mary Lou's family temporarily. Apparently, there was always at least one stray relative living at the Finneys temporarily. It was complete pandemonium at the Finneys. Mary Lou had an older sister and 3 brothers. In addition, there were her parents and Ben. There were footballs and basketballs lying all over the place, and boys sliding down the banister and leaping over tables and talking with their mouths full and interrupting everyone with endless questions. Phoebe took one look around and whispered to me, Mary Lou's parents do not seem to have much control over things, Phoebe said, sounding a bit prissy sometimes. Mr. Finney was lying in the bathtub with all of his clothes on, reading a book. From Mary Lou's bedroom window, I saw Mrs. Finney lying on top of the garage with a pillow under her head. What is she doing? I asked. Mary Lou peered out the window. King of kings, she's taking a nap. When Mr. Finney got out of the bathtub, he went out in the backyard and tossed a football around with Dennis and Dougie, 2 of Mary Lou's brothers. Mr. Finney shouted, Over here! And that away and way to go! The previous weekend, we had had a school sports day. Parents were watching their children show off, and there were even some events for the parents too, such as the 3-legged race and pass the grapefruit. My father could not come, but Mary Lou's parents were there, and so were Phoebe's. Phoebe had said, the games are a little childish sometimes, which is why my parents don't usually participate. Her parents stood on the sidelines, while Mr. and Mrs. Finney ran around shouting, Over here and way to go! In the three-legged race, the Finneys kept falling over. Phoebe said, I wonder if Mary Lou is embarrassed because of the way her parents are acting. I didn't think it was embarrassing. I thought it was nice, but I didn't say so to Phoebe. I think that deep down, Phoebe thought it was nice too, and she wished her own parents would act more like the Finneys. She couldn't admit this, though, and in a way, I liked this about Phoebe, that she tried to defend her family. On the day that Phoebe and I met the potential lunatic and then went over to Mary Lou's, a couple other peculiar things happened. We were sitting on the floor of Mary Lou's room, and Phoebe was telling Mary Lou about the mysterious potential lunatic. Mary Lou's brothers, Dennis, Doug, and Tommy, kept dashing in and out of the room, leaping on the bed, and squirting us with squirt guns. Mary Lou's cousin Ben was lying on her bed, staring at me with his black eyes. They looked like two sparkly black discs set into big round sockets. His dark eyelashes were long and feathery, casting shadows on his cheeks. I like your hair, he said to me. Can you sit on it? Yes, if I want. Ben picked up a piece of paper from Mary Lou's desk, lay back down on the bed, and drew a picture of a lizard-like creature with long black hair that, as it ran down the lizard's back and under its bottom, became a chair with legs. Underneath this, Ben had written salamander sitting on her hair. Very amusing, Phoebe said. She left the room, and Mary Lou followed her. I turned around to hand the drawing back to Ben, just as he leaned forward and mashed his lips into my collarbone. His lips rested there a moment. My nose was pressed into his hair, which smelled like grapefruit. Then he rolled off the bed, grabbed the drawing, and dashed out of the room. Did he actually kiss my collarbone? And if he did, why did he do that? Was the kiss supposed to land somewhere else, like on my mouth, for example? That was a chilling thought. Had I imagined it? Maybe he merely brushed against me as he was rolling off the bed. On the way home from Mary Lou's that day, Phoebe said, Wasn't it, loud there? I didn't mind, I said. I was thinking of something my father said once to my mother. We'll fill the house up with children. We'll fill it right up to the brim. But they hadn't filled it up. It was just me and them, and then it was just me and my father. When we got back to Phoebe's house, her mother was lying on the couch, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Is something wrong? Phoebe asked. Oh, no, Mrs. Winterbottom said. Nothing's wrong. Then Phoebe told her mother about the potential lunatic who had come to the house earlier. This news upset Mrs. Winterbottom. She wanted to know exactly what he had said and what Phoebe had said and what he looked like and how he acted and how Phoebe acted and on and on. At last, Mrs. Winterbottom said, I think we had better not mention this to your father. She reached forward as if to hug Phoebe, but Phoebe pulled away. Later, Phoebe said, That's odd. Usually my mother tells my father absolutely everything. Well, maybe she's trying to save you from getting into trouble for talking with a stranger. I still don't like keeping it secret from him, Phoebe said. We walked out onto the porch, and there, lying on the top step, was a white envelope. There was no name or anything on the outside. I thought it was one of those advertisements for painting your house or cleaning your carpets. Phoebe opened it. Gosh, she said. Inside was a small piece of blue paper, and on it was printed the message, Don't judge a man until you've walked 2 moons in his moccasins. What an odd thing, Phoebe said. When Phoebe showed the message to her mother, Mrs. Winterbottom clutched at her collar. Who could it be for? Mrs. Winterbottom asked. Mr. Winterbottom came in the back door, carrying his golf clubs. Look, George, Mrs. Winterbottom said, who could this be for? I couldn't say, really, Mr. Winterbottom said. But, George, why would someone send us that message? I couldn't say, Norma. Maybe it isn't for us. Not for us, Mrs. Winterbottom said. But it was on our steps. Really, Norma, it could be for anyone. Maybe it's for Prudence or Phoebe. Phoebe? Mrs. Winterbottom asked. Is it for you? For me? Phoebe said. I don't think so. Well, who is it for? Mrs. Winterbottom said. She was awfully worried. I believe she thought it came from the potential lunatic. All right, let me pause the recording.